Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to analyze a malware called EvilQuest. It was detected first in 2020. Uh, First I will start with exploring the malware package. I want to see which file type it is, which other files exist inside this package, if it has any scripts, and I want to extract as much as information from the files inside it. For example, if they have any strings or ASCIIs that can help us during the analysis. This malware implemented some anti-analysis techniques that's common in malware, so it makes the life of the analyst harder. We want to look at them and see how we can bypass them. When we looked at the files, we could find some obfuscated strings. These are really important to de-obfuscate them because usually you can find, for example, command and control IP address, the commands that it accepts, and in general, the functionality of this malware. Malware developers usually obfuscate these strings or encrypt them to hide their actions. And in the end, I want to use sandbox analysis to just understand what the malware does when you run it. That's also one way to analyze it. In general, with all of these steps, we get some idea about the malware functionality. And the first step, which exploring the malware package, is general. So for any suspicious app or file in Mac OS, you can use it to see if you can find anything after or not. Okay, so let's start with the first step, which is exploring the malware. When you download this file, I actually put a link to the malware file in the description. So you can find it there. You can find three files: readme, patch, and mixed in key 8 DMG file. One important thing is to check if these files are signed. You don't expect the patch file is signed, but the first one, usually most apps are signed. I use What's Your Sign app to see if this was signed or not and which item type it is. Okay, it detected it as a disk image. So it's a disk. When you click on it, it mounted to volumes, and it's unsigned. So that's already a red flag. We should check why this is unsigned. Maybe something has been changed in the file. It's a disk image and it's unsigned. Let's go and mount this image to the volumes so we can see what is inside it. I use HDI-util command to attach this DMG file to volumes. I use HDI-util attach and I just pass a no verify flag to it. Okay, it mounted it to volume. So if you go to volumes mixed in key, you should be able to see which files is there. This DMG file has a PKG file. Again, you want to check this file to see if it's signed or not and what information is there. For this analysis, I will use suspicious package app. So I will open suspicious package app to see what it has. Okay, here it is. I open it. There are different tabs here. In all files, you can see all the files that this package has. There is an app there, and also there is a patch file. And if you go to the all script, usually there is a post install script that a malware has that is executed after mounting the disk image. So here you can find the script. So a directory is created in library which is called mixed and key. A file called patch is moved to this address, and so we see that there's a move action. It makes it executable with chmod, and then it execute this file. So this file is already suspicious, and we need to have an eye on it. Okay, so by looking at post install a script, we already have some idea what the malware does. We've seen two files here, so I want to extract these two files to the downloads folder and then later analyze them. Okay, let's check these two files that we downloaded. Again, we want to check if they are signed or not. That's a really good indication for us to see if we need to invest more time on it or not. Mixed in key 8, if we check it with what's your sign app, you can see that this actually has been signed and this signature is valid. So probably we don't need to put much effort on it unless the malware developers stole the certificate and sign this app again. So for now we park it and we focus on patch file. We want to extract as much as information from this file first. I want to use two commands, nm to check the symbols inside the patch file and also strings. So let's start with nm patch to see if there are any symbols that are interesting for us. Let's start from the top. Okay, here it is. These are native API calls that can help us to understand what the malware does. For example, event tab create and enable, that's an indication of the keylogger probably. And also we see ns create object file image from memory. That means that the malware is capable of downloading file and executing it right from the memory without writing on the disk. That's a good way to bypass detection. And you can learn a lot because the symbols are there, it's not obfuscated. So that's the most easiest way to understand the behavior of the malware. We see this react exec host keys ping. Probably these are the functionality of the malware. It can execute things, it can collect information about the host keys. The ping functionality, usually malware developers want to know if the victim is live or not, so they use this sort of ping functionality. They can save file and do other things. We see some indication of the encryption and decryption, so it could be also ransomware. Let's move forward. What else we can find here? Timer, that's one way to also detect debuggers and sandboxes, so that could also be interesting. We see encode and decode, so probably we need to look at these two functions in the assembler, disassembler, to see if they are encoding or decoding anything. That would also be interesting. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but it's really interesting to check them. Let's also check the strings command to see the ASCII file there. That's also should be very interesting. For example, if you find obfuscated or encrypted strings, usually you can find it there. And if packer or this sort of thing are not used, you can also find all the command and control capabilities inside the malware. Okay, so we are already seeing some indication of the encoding and decoding inside the strings. For example, these are the one chunk of data that was decoded, and also we've seen that encryption and decryption function in the nm output, so that's interesting. Let's see what else we can find. Maybe there are something without any obfuscation that we can use. Okay, this silent reroute, these are probably some functionality options that they can use to run the malware. We see host information, get HTTP, that's also interesting. So probably the command and control communication is via HTTP or HTTPS. Let's see if we can find anything else. Okay, I think that's enough. We already have a good idea of what the malware does by just looking at the symbols and ASCIIs inside the file. Now we finished the first step. We extracted as much information as possible. If we look at the output of strings and NM file, we can also see that some anti debugging techniques have been implemented. For example, here let's grep for debug and see, and also maybe trace to see, because these are the usually the in some indicator that there are some anti debugging techniques implemented. Yeah, you can see it is debugging, prevent, trace, ptrace. So these are the indication that these anti-debugging solutions have been implemented in the malware. So we can go there and see how we can bypass them. In order to check these functions, the best way is to use Hopper, in my opinion. So we just open the patch file in the Hopper and we dig into it to see what these functions does. Let me go to the debugging function. Yeah, for example, this is one example. So we know that this function has been called. We can also go and find all the references to this and then try to escape those calls by just changing, for example, the instruction pointer. Yeah, so that's it. You can put a breakpoint there, go there, change the instruction pointer, and skip those anti debugging functionality that have been implemented. I'm not gonna dig into that, but you can do it yourself. I want to move to a next phase, which are related to obfuscated strings that we found in the output of the strings command. Okay, let's go to the output of the strings command. We've seen some encoded strings there, and then we can use that to find these obfuscated codes in the disassembler. I'm using Hopper for that. So let's just search it here and try to find this obfuscated code in the obfuscated string in the code. Okay, yes, here it is. If you look at this section, you can see that all of these obfuscated code, they are next to each other in one section. So it's good to go and check out to see which section it is. To do that, I'm going to use another tool which is called otool. This lists all the section of the executable. Here it is, and here you can see for example the address and also the size of the each section. I'm gonna use I already checked that, so I'm gonna grep it to make it a little bit easier to find. So the address that we are looking is this one, and if you look at the C string section, you can see that this address will fall in this address before the size of this section ends. So we know that all of these obfuscated strings are inside C string section. Okay, that's clear. but what is missing is that which function is used to de-obfuscate this string. In order to find that out, we go back to Hopper. We click on the one of those obfuscated strings, and we check the references to this obfuscated string, because when the malware wants to de-obfuscate it, it needs to reference that address. So here it is. We see that it loads it in RDI, and then EISCR is called. So this is the function that the malware uses for decoding, de-obfuscating this string. Okay, that's clear. Let's go there and see which address it is. Okay, here it is. This is the address of the de-obfuscator in the malware. So what we are going to do, we are going to force the malware to list all of those obfuscated string, feed it to this function, and ask the malware to de-obfuscate all of these strings itself. Okay, how we are going to do that? We need to write a code, the dynamic library, and inject it to the malware. So when the malware runs, first this library is loaded, list all of those obfuscated string, and feed it to this function. This is the code that we wrote for this. This is the constructor of the dynamic loader, DLL, and here what we do, first we figure out where this EISCR function, where it is loaded in the memory. If we know that, we know how many addresses we need to move forward to get to the C string section. In order to figure that out, the number that you can see here, it's easy to do. So here we know the address of the EISCR, and also from the output of the otool we know the address of the C section. So what we need to do is to just go to the calculator and find the differences between these two. So this is the address of the CS string, that you can find it here. Let's say minus the address of the de-obfuscator function, which is minus 1 0 0 5 0 and then C20. Yes, so this is the difference between the addresses when it's loaded in the memory, and that's exactly the number that we use here to get it to this to a sort of the CS string. So we check the memory for the EISCR function, we find the address, we add this address to get to the CS string, and we know also the length of the CS string section based on the output of the otool tool. So the size is 2A09. So we also set that here. We set the current address to the start of the CS string. We loop over it, we iterate it, and we feed the strings to this function. The output of this function is a de-obfuscated string, so we just print it. And then we update the current address for the next obfuscated string, and we do that again. Inside that section, I could find some actually plain text that was not obfuscated. They had a space in it, and some of them, the length of them were lower than 4. So I just skipped them because they are not obfuscated. So that's a code that we need. Let's first compile this code, and then let's run it. The way that we run it is using the we want to inject this library to this patch file. So we use dynamic load insert libraries. We put the name of the library that we created, and now when this loads in the constructor of this library is called. And if you go to the bottom of it, we see that after this the obfuscation ends, we use exit. So actually the malware code is not executed because it exits. Let's see what it returns to us. We should see all the obfuscated strings. Okay, there are a couple of file types. Probably ransomware usually check these files because they don't want to encrypt everything, so they usually put some filters there. And also if they want to kind of infect some other executable in the system, they look for certain file types. In general, they list certain file types for different reasons, and that's why you can see all of these tar, rar, and etc. This is the readme node. Probably this is for the ransomware node. And then let's dig into all the de-obfuscated strings more to see if we can find any other interesting things there. Okay, this is the ransom note that they put there. Okay, this is the file passes are interesting because usually malwares use it to, for example, find certain file in a certain file path or do something there. So it's interesting to see them. We see a name of couple of security tools here. That's normal. Probably the malware checks these tools, and if it sees that these security tools are running, it just exit without infecting the malware to kind of prevent detection. Is hider. This is for the ping functionality that we discussed. A script has been executed. So it says that you need administrative privilege. So that's interesting. Probably then this malware is installed as with the administrative privileges. IPs are interesting. Probably this is the command and control IP address. Again, file passes. We said that is interesting. We see a plist file. This is probably the plist file of the malware. We see a configuration. If we look at it, it seems like yeah, this is one of the string that we also found in the output of the strings function. So this file, this daemon can run by different arguments. Let's move forward. We see another configuration file. We see generate key. That's also interesting. We see again this still seems obfuscated, so it's not clear. We need to dig into that to see why it is like that. Maybe it's just a hard-coded secret in the malware. It looks at the wallet and keys. Probably this is related to the information collection from the endpoint. Another script we see here, it checks certain folders. It's a readme, and also this is another script. We can check it to see what it does. Yeah, that's it. So basically, by just de-obfuscating all of these strings, we found a lot of important information: the IP of the command and control server, the functionality of malware, and now we can just go to the disassembler, put a breakpoint there, and kind of dig into all of this functionality to understand what this malware does. Yeah, so that's it for deobfuscating these strings. Let's go back to the last step that we want to take, which is sandbox analysis. You can analyze the behavior of this malware by just running it and see what it does. For example, you can use process monitor, file monitor, and also a Wireshark to check the, for example, network activities. So that's the easy way to analyze the malware. What I've done, I've used VirusTotal sandbox to analyze it. So if you upload this file in the VirusTotal, you can also see all of these behavioral, all of these behaviors. 6 MITRE signatures were fired. We see network communication and we see some dropped files. So we can analyze them to see if we can find anything interesting there. App bundle contains hidden files directory. That's malware use a lot. Virtualization sandbox evasion. We already found some anti-analysis functions in the malware. Input capture keylogging. We found that API in the output of NM, one of those symbols was related to uh, registering the malware to get those events. So we already knew that. There is an information collection from that endpoint. Usually malwares want to know, collect basic information about the victim and send it to the command control server. That's why we see this kind of discovery and also collection. Again, keylogger. We see HTTPS and DNS lookup. We already found those information. We see that security libraries used for certificate and key. We already know about that. We found that also in the de-obfuscated string. Okay, for network communication, we see this IP. I think that was the IP that we found here. So let's just check that. Yeah, so here it is. So we could find this IP address in the malware already. The good thing about malware analysis and digging into the malware binary is that if there are a couple of IP addresses or if there is a function that generates this IP addresses, you can analyze it and find the whole list, not just the ones that you could see in the sandbox. Yeah, as you can see, there are something passed to that HTTP address. Some parameters have been passed. DNS resolution looks normal. Then let's see. There are a couple of files opened, so we can check all of them here. File written are interesting to see which file has been written. This malware actually infects existing existing executables, so that's why there are a lot of file written activities. And these are the name of the malware configuration. We already found that in the de-obfuscated strings. File copied, that's also interesting. File drop are interesting. Okay, we see that this pkg file in the volume has been opened. As you can, if you can remember, it was a disk image file that mounted on the volumes, and there was an app there, so you can see all the command and process tree here. Okay, that's a sandbox analysis. You can dig into this dynamic analysis by using file monitor and process monitor and Wireshark, but I think for now it's enough. So let's quickly recap what we've done. First, we look at the malware package. That's really useful to understand if something is off there or not. We realized that it was not signed. We look at the script inside the package, and we realized that the app was actually signed, but the patch file was not signed. So we focus on the patch file. We checked. We know that some anti-analysis techniques were used based on the output of the NM and strings. So we went to the disassembler hopper and found those functions, and if we want, we can skip them by just changing the instruction pointer when the execution reaches those addresses. We found obfuscated strings, and then we wrote a code to de-obfuscate them. We wrote a library and injected to the sandbox to the malware. So it could de-obfuscate all of these strings for us. And also by sandbox analysis, we could confirm our analysis, and we could see that all of those command and control communication, the files manipulations, uh, and the process tree. So we could also find that there. Okay, that's analysis of EvilQuest. If you want to dig into this malware more, you can read the book, which is called The Art of Mac Malware Analysis. It's written by Patrick Wardell. I read it and I enjoyed it a lot. So if you want to learn more, just go and read this book. Thanks for following this video, and have a good day.